This is David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, episode number 18 for December 2010. I'm your host, David Andrew Wiebe. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Today's show might be a little bit on the shorter side, but I'm going to try to fill the usual 30 to 40 minute quota. Today, as I put this together, it is December 20th, so I thought I would get this done before all this craziness, Christmas craziness happens. The month has just flown by. So before it gets any crazier, I thought I would sit down and get this done and get this out for you. First of all, I wanted to welcome any new listeners. I have been running some Google ads as of late, so I think there might be a few new subscribers, a few new listeners. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you do subscribe. Obviously, subscription is absolutely free. You don't have to pay a cent for it, and you will be updated with new podcast episodes. I don't have any new shows to announce, but I have been performing with Daniel Guy Martin recently, and I interviewed him in episode 11 of the podcast, if you want to go back and check that out. That's been a lot of fun. Our shows have sort of been kind of playful in nature. We've been jamming on each other's songs and different arrangements of Beatles tunes and that kind of thing. Our most recent show was on December 17th, and that was at the House Coffee Sanctuary. Of course, Derek Mitchell, I interviewed him in the previous episode, so I should say thanks to Derek. So here's a shout out for you. We also had a guest guitarist accompany us by the name of Nathan Page, and it's someone I knew from before previously, but I guess it was probably his first time performing, so it was really interesting kind of having three guitars, on stage, and we're just trading off licks and trading off solos, and so that was a lot of fun. Today is the special Christmas episode, I guess you could say. I even have my guitar with me today, so who knows what might happen. Hopefully not too much of that. Well, you know what? I don't hate Christmas music, but this time of year we tend to be a little bit bombarded with that. But I just thought I'd have some fun. So if you're looking for an episode that's jam-packed with the best content, this probably isn't it. But there will still be some cool things. I wrote a new blog post, and you can go to either daw-music.com or the podcast blog to check it out. It's called Lessons from Yanni, A Living Legacy. Now, I'm not the one calling Yanni a living legacy. That is what this compilation is titled. Apparently, I don't think it's released yet, but it's going to be coming out in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. And it will feature some of his most memorable and best performances from around the world. And that was one of the cool things watching it. It was just seeing him perform in these really exotic and different venues. So there might be a few tidbits and takeaways from that if you want to check it out for the indie artist. It's always good to have plans regardless of what stage you're at. Yanni might be putting on these humongous shows to huge audiences, but even if you're not, I think there's a few lessons and a few takeaways that you might be able to garner from that. In other news, I recently purchased a new phone. I upgraded to a Samsung Vibrant, which is a really cool phone. But before I get to that, I should mention that my previous phone was a Palm Trio. I believe it's the 700WX, and it had Windows Mobile. Yeah, it's a little... My experience with the phone wasn't terrible. I think as far as interactivity with other Windows Mobile phone or other Trio phones, it's fairly compatible. It works pretty well, but I was trying to transfer the contacts from the phone onto my new phone, from the Palm Trio to the Vibrant, and they were trying to get this done at the store, but they couldn't do it. So I had to go home and try to figure out how to do this. So I couldn't just simply beam the contacts over. But I found, first of all, that there actually is Bluetooth compatibility between the two phones. So they do show up as Bluetooth devices, which is nice. Only, the contacts are stored in some kind of proprietary format on the Palm Trio. So the Samsung didn't immediately recognize this. So eventually, what I ended up figuring out was that I could store the contacts on my PC using Windows or Microsoft Outlook, which I've never used before nor bothered to install. I'll be honest with you. And so I could sync it up with Microsoft Outlook, and then I could forward all those contacts to an email address, in this case a Gmail account, and then later when I have a data plan for my Vibrant, I will actually be able to sync up with Google, with my Google account, and get all my contacts. But until then, I don't have all my contacts in my phone. It's so convoluted, and I just don't think one should have to do that. And so if there were any other reasons that I wasn't happy with the Trio, that would be one of them. Another one was just the fact that it took me a while to figure it out, because I think my previous Trio was not on Windows Mobile. I don't know what OS. I think it was a Palm OS. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Palm OS. And that didn't take me too long to figure out, but when I switched from the older Trio to the new Trio, that took me a little while to figure out just the new platforms. So I don't think the platforms should be hard to figure out, or phone OSs should be. My new Vibrant, I thought it was going to take me an hour. It only took me a matter of minutes to figure out how to use, and I think that's how it's supposed to be. But it's a lot like the new iPhone, and Apple products have always been pretty easy to figure out. My iPod, was easy to figure out, and that's how products are supposed to be, I think. I am excited about my new phone. I got it because it wasn't a complimentary upgrade, but it was a discounted upgrade, so I didn't have to spend a ton of money to get it. And the other thing is, I'm just excited to use the new features to possibly see if there's new venues for recording video as well as audio. So maybe there's some possibilities there as far as recording podcast interviews go. As far as the interviews go, I've always had to record them here in the studio, but I've been looking into a digital recorder and found that, well, they're not terribly expensive, but I'm not able to afford that right now. So I thought I would invest in a phone that might be able to record larger audio files, and then I can pretty much meet anybody anywhere to interview them, which would be great. So I don't know if that's going to work out yet, but I figured it was one possibility. I could meet them at Starbucks or Second Cup or whatever, and interview them where it's convenient, and maybe right at shows, because I do go to shows occasionally. I do go to concerts and performances. My preference is to perform rather than to go and watch shows, but I still have a good time when I go. So I have another project in the works that was slated for release this Christmas, and I'm still holding to that, but it's a matter of days away at this point, so I'm not sure. I think I might be on a bit of a tight schedule to try to finish it for Christmas, but keep a lookout on my website. I think I don't want to tell you anything about it just yet, but I think it will be coming out in the new year at latest, and so in January. And it's not strictly Christmas in nature, so I think everybody can enjoy it, and it's going to be offered for free, which is another thing. So you'll be able to download it for free. And this brings me to another point, which is that I'm probably going to put these items in the podcast feed. So hopefully you're okay with that. Hopefully you don't mind somewhere in the range of 15, 20 new items showing up in the feed. If that sounds like a concern to you, make sure to let me know and leave me some feedback. I'm going to play a little bit of guitar here, just some random chords, and then we'll move on to the next segment. Oh goodness, that sounded a bit like Matchbox 20. Anyway, new segment right after this. Visit us online at www.daw-music.com/daw-podcast. And don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends about this podcast. Alright, so what I thought I would do today, it's been a little while since I've covered any news headlines, so today's new segment is called Rapid Fire News Headlines. So I'm going to share with you a bunch of stuff that I've found to be interesting in the last little while. Obviously, it's not going to be comprehensive or cover every news item that's been out there, but it'll definitely cover a lot more than I've usually done, which is about 3 news items in the podcast. First news item is the Beatles are now on iTunes, and the world offers their collective apathy. No, I'm just kidding. Apparently, the sales have been pretty good. About 2 million in the first week is what I heard. Yeah, I think I heard on another podcast they were saying, well, you know, who doesn't own Beatles? I don't. Surprisingly, I don't actually own any Beatles albums whatsoever, and that's not a conscious thing. I just haven't really gotten into their music yet. Of course, you know, how can you not have heard most of their catalog? There are definitely some slightly more obscure tunes, but I've heard a ton of their music, and you know, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing that they're on iTunes, and maybe in the future I will make that purchase. Next news item, Gene Simmons claims that the new superstars will be emerging from Canada. No disagreements there. I think there's some great talent up here, even just in Calgary. But yeah, definitely in all of Canada, there's some great talent. In other news, Gene Simmons also claims that he should replace Simon Cowell on X Factor. Again, no disagreements here. Do it. U2's Bono says that the band owes a great deal to David Bowie, which doesn't particularly surprise me. You know, David Bowie is a big influence, certainly in the UK and even outside. He's been an influence on me. I remember one point in my life even taking a great deal of influence from David Bowie, and then all of a sudden my music was starting to sound like U2. So I can see the connection for sure. Mr. Big has posted a new video of their new song. They've also announced that they will be releasing their new album, What If, which is slated for release in Europe on January 21st, 2011. The North American release is to follow in February. Here's looking forward to that. You know, I'm a big fan of Mr. Big. I love what they do. And the new album sort of sounds a little more serious in tone, and so it definitely reflects the growth and of the band for sure. Jeff Beck will be performing at the 2011 Isle of Wight Festival. Good for him. You know, he's a fantastic guitar player, and if you happen to be going to the Isle of Wight Festival, I am very envious. Beastie Boys' Adam Yauch is writing and directing the new short film Fight for Your Right. The movie is about the band's 1987 video Fight for Your Right and is set to star Elijah Wood. I think there was also mention of people like Jack Black and Seth Rogen, John C. Reilly, people like that. I'm not sure about Jack Black actually, but people like that being in this film. I'm not sure how much depth they're going to get out of the 1987 video Fight for Your Right, but hey, you know, I'm a bit of a Beastie Boys fan. It would be interesting to see what comes of it. Pearl Jam has announced that they will be hosting and supposedly probably headlining their own summer music festival in 2011. You know, it's only assumed that they will be headlining it as well, but it'd be cool to see what happens with that. In an effort to raise funds for the Crossroads Center, Eric Clapton will be auctioning off vintage guitars and amplifiers yet again. Among other items, he will be auctioning off the guitar he used on the Cream reunion shows in 2005 and the speaker cabinet he used in the 70s. The auction will be held in New York in 2011. Certainly, as you may or may not know, this isn't the first time Eric Clapton's done this. I think the last time he sold off a lot of his legendary guitars, like Blackie. Supposedly, Van Halen will be entering the studio next month. Apparently, band members are eager to tour again and want to tour behind new material. Eddie has been writing like crazy. most of 2010, apparently, and has been sending the new tracks to David Lee Roth. The band has also been exploring Eddie's catalog of unreleased material, so it should be interesting to see what they come up with. Maybe it'll be a 20 or 30 track massive double disc release or something like that, and maybe not. Maybe it'll just be 9 to 12 tracks like we're used to from the band. But in either case, I hope to see some material that maybe it's not just classic, but a balance between their classic and updated in the sound. I've appreciated the depth that they had on what was their 95 release. I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, I think it showed a lot of maturity and depth, and so hoping that it's not just a party album. Bon Jovi is considering going indie for their next studio album. Drummer Tico Torres adds that the old model of the major labels is failing, which I think, if you don't know by now, what rock have you been under? And hopefully this means that we're one step closer to maybe a new model that actually it does work. Mark Hoppus announces that there will be a new Blink-182 album followed by a tour. This will be their first album since reuniting as a band, and so it seems like a natural progression from where they came from. The illegal downloading of music is apparently growing and rising in UK. Of course, this was accompanied by the usual comment on making new legislation and tightening on the laws, which I don't know if that's going to help or work in any way. I think it's maybe due time that we consider other methods of monetizing, or, I think there was a statement saying it's making it difficult for newer artists to profit on music in the industry, which I don't know if that's true or not. If that is true, then I think there's definitely a point to argue there. Let us know what you think. Judas Priest frontman Rob Halford announces that the Farewell Tour will last at least 2 years until 2012. He also says that he has some other big news, but wouldn't go into more detail. Foo Fighters frontman David Grohl will be appearing in the upcoming Muppets movie. The movie is also set to feature cameos from people like Jack Black, Ricky Gervais, and Lady Gaga. I'm not sure if I'm saying all those names correctly. Rage Against the Machine may be recording a new album. According to an interview with Rage frontman Zach De La Rocha, the band is working on a new album due out next year. I'm a big fan of Tom Morello and his work, and I think he's a fantastic, superb guitarist, and definitely be interesting to see what they come up with. Velvet Revolver may have found a new lead singer. Drummer Matt Sorum says that they haven't gotten the chance to sit down and talk about it yet, in light of the fact that Slash has been on the road, but if he is the right guy, they will be recording and going on tour. Jimi Hendrix biopic has been cancelled. Apparently the idea was rejected by Experience Hendrix, the overseers of the Hendrix estate. Reasons remain ambiguous. I think this is too bad. I would have liked to have seen it myself, and I think one of the issues they had to get clearance for the cover tunes that Hendrix used to perform, which of course would include stuff from Bob Dylan and Chuck Berry, and so it would have been an interesting film, but I guess it's not coming out. And that's my rapid fire music headlines. And so right after this, I have an interview and performance with Nathaniel Krieger. This is a shorter interview, but I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or comments regarding this podcast, send an email to comments@daw-music.com. All right, I'm sitting down today with Nathaniel Krieger. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
Just like to make sure. Why don't we start with your musical background? How did you get started in music?
I've been playing music for a long time. I started with piano, and I did that for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. Switched over to percussion. I did that, played in a few bands, did a little bit of touring, switched over to guitar. I've been doing that for about the last 7 years.
Right.
So,
as far as aspirations go, what would you like to be able to do with music?
Rule the world, for the most part. Most of it, maybe half the world.
Rule half the world with music.
Yeah, I think that's the road I want to go.
Excellent. Talk about your current projects. What are you up to with music these days?
Currently, I'm working on a few projects. I'm working on releasing an LP of myself called Coffee Shop Confessions. I'm working on releasing some music for some other artists, and major thing I've been working on is starting up a record label called Not a Number Records.
Yeah.
That would fill a gap that I think there is in music today by promoting artists that can't necessarily get promoted on their own.
What would you say is unique about your idea?
That it would be not for profit. It would be purely to help people achieve musical goals, help them achieve their part of the world, I guess.
So let's get into some specifics, like what sort of things are going to be different about this label that's going to be revolutionary or unique?
It's going to be run majority-wise off of sponsors.
Yeah.
People will sponsor an artist or sponsor the label, giving a certain amount of money a month to see that artist built up, recorded, promoted, and encouraged and trained to be a better artist. They'll actually be building an artist. They won't be supporting one by buying their records. They'll be helping build that artist to actually sell their records.
Right. So that's almost like a throwback to the old model in the sense that, there were musicians that producers saw potential in, and they offered a development contract or decided to work with that artist to the point where they could be successful.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. It just involves the public a lot more. Say if you have an artist who can find themselves 20 sponsors, those 20 sponsors are going to pay for that artist to go to a studio. They're going to pay for that artist to get an album pressed. They're going to pay for that artist to go on tour. And then if that artist ever does take off, those people helped build that artist.
And that's the reality of music, isn't it? Is that there's a lot of costs associated with being a musician or an artist.
Yeah, there's a lot of money involved. Yeah, for sure.
Well, obviously, I like your philosophy a lot. It's sort of what we've tried to do here with Red Flame, is develop artists. But speaking of which, we did do a little bit of recording and playing together a few years back. Maybe you remember.
Yep, I remember.
So why don't you talk a little bit about your experience and what your impressions were of working with us here at Red Flame?
It was quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
I feel like. Yeah, at that point in time, I hadn't really done any recording with anybody or anything like that, and that was a first step into the direction of actually seeing the other side of music, seeing the side that I wanted to be involved in, production and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely an experience, a stepping stone in the direction I wanted to go.
So you've always had aspirations towards being a producer or engineer, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've always had aspirations towards that, but more so I've always had aspirations to help other people achieve their goals artistically.
So what are some specific ways that you think you'll be able to do that?
I guess some ways sorry, horrible grammar. Some of the ways that I can see Not a Number helping people out is getting them introduced and associated with people that have connections that can get them places. It's not exactly easy to get into all the bars in the city and be able to play music, or into all of the different venues that are out and about.
Right.
You have to know people. You have to have a network of people you can play with, different musicians, drummers, backup singers, all sorts of things. And by working with all of these people and by working with Not a Number, hopefully that would be what we could achieve for like the single artist.
Now, I mean, the music industry climate has changed a lot in the last couple of decades. So it's as far as, coping with that, with the changes of the music industry, what sort of things do you have in mind?
I think it's kind of one of those things that by running as a not-for-profit where people can actually sponsor an artist, like let's face it, music is free now. Nobody wants to pay for it. You got to make your money from shows. You got to make your money from merchandise.
Right.
And then touring. By having sponsors, that's going to enable us to get people's music out there, ideally for free. Being able to record something and give it out to people just to sort of spread a name. If it's not always about the bottom dollar when it comes to recording a song, so many more people are going to be able to have access to that song if it's just given.
And that's something that's always existed in some way or another, right? I mean, radio is basically free to listen to, or, record labels used to and probably still do send out free CDs with just compilations of artists and their labels.
Yeah, for sure. But it's always with the idea, sell that artist.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, like, be able to make money off of them. And more so, I want to build a culture of art.
Right.
I don't know, not just another artist, but a whole culture of people that embrace art, sponsor art, develop art.
And the other thing you mentioned there was how you're trying to get sponsors. And I think that's one of the unique things you got going, is that you're trying to get people personally invested in a musician or an artist. And I think if there's that personal connection right from the get-go, that they definitely want to see that person succeed.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be cool to say that you knew Katy Perry or something like that? Like,
hey, 6 degrees of separation. You can know anyone you want to.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool to say that you helped record their first album?
Hey, yeah. I've personally had the pleasure of interviewing people like Tommy Tallarico or Derek Sivers or Pete Lesperance. Some of my heroes. So it's very cool that we can be so connected with the internet age and the things the way they are now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about social media then? Like, what is your opinion on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, that kind of thing?
Whatever gets you out there.
Yeah?
Yeah. If that's where people are, then that's where you go. You can't get your art to people unless you go where people are.
Right. Have you had some success with that yourself?
We're still at a launch stage.
Yeah.
So it's still getting everything up and running. So there hasn't been too much trial with that yet. Hopefully soon we'll have a web page up and running and ready to go before our launch concert.
Right. And you yourself are a songwriter too. Are you looking to continue to work at that?
Yeah, I'm looking to keep doing that. And, you gotta have artists on a label. And if I'm one of the only artists right now, well, then that's fine. And
right.
We can have a few other, and just everybody helping everybody achieve their goals.
Why don't you talk about production for a minute? What is it about music production that you get fired up about? And
it's kind of like painting or writing a song. It's creating something that wasn't there before.
Right.
So much of the time, like, we're just surrounded by noise, and it feels pretty good when you can get that all together and make it sound good.
We already touched on this a little bit, but my question is, the music industry, I think the key word here is changing, not so much changed, because it seems to be continually going in different directions. We live in kind of an exponential world where everything is just changing at it seems like a faster and more rapid pace. What is your opinion of that, the way the music industry is now compared to the way it was?
I think it's getting better. It's getting harder and harder for large companies to be able to hold the grasp that they had, the chokehold on it, if you will, on creativity. Anybody with a computer can get something recorded now. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of liberating.
So you would say that's kind of leveled the playing field?
Yeah, I'd say that. I don't think you have to be a record executive to be able to get somewhere.
So have you had any success with marketing, promotion? Are you just getting your start in that side of things? Or
Yeah, just getting it all started up here within the next week or so for our launch concert, and then we'll go from there.
Very cool. So what are the details of that launch concert? Do you have that lined up already?
Yeah, it's going to be January 21st, starting at 7 p.m. at the House Coffee Shop in Kensington. Right now, we don't have a nail down on exactly who's playing. We have 3 or 4 people for sure, and we're hoping to get a couple more. So,
and hopefully by now our listeners are familiar with the House Coffee Sanctuary, especially since we had Derek Mitchell in last time on the podcast. So if people want to get in touch with you, do you have a website, email address?
Yeah, it's somethingaboutnan@gmail.com.
We'll try to get that in the show notes. Any other closing remarks or anything we should have touched on?
Not that I can think of.
Nope.
Hopefully I didn't stutter too much.
All right. Well, you're still going to play a song for us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. What's the name of the song?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, I always switch my names on my songs until they're finally recorded and on something. So for the time being, this song is called Maybe.
Excellent. Well, here's Maybe by Nathaniel Krieger.
Maybe curtains, the day is dark, and with every day I sink a little deeper. It's a damn good thing, you know how to swim. My tongue gets tied up in my mouth and it's tangled on the words I'm trying to spit out, and like a clock ticks, my t-shirt sticks to the back of my neck when your hand crosses mine, and it's a long way across your father's couch for my lips to pass and make it out, but I've got just one more try, and I'm a boy, I'm a man, I'm a child who wants to be alive, and no one told us it would be this hard. Behind the curtains, the day is dark, and with every day I sink a little deeper. It's a damn good thing, you know how to swim, how to swim, how to swim, how to swim. No one told us it would be this hard. Behind the curtains, the day is dark, and with every day I sink a little deeper. It's a damn good thing, a damn good thing, you know how to swim.
This podcast is a part of the Blueberry Network. You can find this and other great podcasts at blueberry.com. That's blueberry with no e's.com.
This month's resource tip is CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. As of December 2010, they have 104 episodes jam-packed with great content. If you're an independent musician with a do-it-yourself attitude, this podcast is definitely worth checking out. The show features some great tips on booking shows, fan funding, social media, the legality of recording cover songs, and a great deal more. You can find the podcast online at cdbabypodcast.com or by searching for it on iTunes.
Hi, this is Jonathan Ferguson. You're listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast.
So I wanted to discuss the future of the podcast in closing. I have some new ideas and some plans, and would definitely appreciate your feedback on all these things. First of all, I was thinking or considering of giving the podcast a new name. As far as what that new name would be, I'm still up in the air. I don't have any ideas yet. So if you do have any ideas, make sure to send me a message or an email and let me know. Of course, you can send me an email at david@daw-music.com or leave a comment in the show notes. Another thing that I'm thinking about is a new format of the podcast. So far, it's been monthly episodes, and usually they've contained interviews and a whole bunch of other material, extra stuff that you might be interested in. What I thought I would do instead was break it up a little bit. So I'd have bi-weekly episodes with one episode usually containing things like music headlines, resource tips, and all the extra stuff, and then another podcast episode with the interviews that I do. So let me know if that sounds a little more digestible, because I think the episodes would be a little bit shorter if I did that sort of format. And also I thought I would just try to push more releases out. Also have some new goals in mind for this coming year and as far as I can see for the rest of my career, whatever that may look like. And those goals include transparency, generosity, and I feel like there should be a third word, but I haven't figured out what that will be yet. So I'm going to talk about things that I'm maybe a little scared to do. I've been listening to a lot of Seth Godin recently that is talking on podcasts and things, and that was one of the things that I felt challenged on, was just the idea that if there's something we're scared of, that's what we need to do. So I thought I would give that a shot. And so transparency, talking about things openly and in more detail. And that's not going to be the easiest for me, but I'm going to give it a shot. And another is, of course, generosity. It's another idea that he discusses. I believe that I have been generous in many ways, but I want to continue to expand on that and give away more free stuff, which is, I think I mentioned earlier that I'm putting out a new project for download on my website. So that was kind of one of the first ways in which I wanted to be more generous. And another concept that he talks about is shipping, and that's the idea of that, as artists, we tend to hold on to projects perhaps longer than we should. We're scared, it's not perfect, whatever the reasons. Just the fear holds us back from actually putting it out. And that was one of the things that's also pushed me to think about releasing things more regularly, and also the aforementioned project that I'll be releasing on my website. And that'll be at www.daw-music.com, and you'll want to check back regularly because it will be coming out soon, and maybe by the time you hear this, it will already be out. And again, as mentioned earlier, I'm thinking of putting that in the podcast feed. So hope you're okay with that. Of course, any feedback is appreciated on any of these items. I should also mention that you should take the survey at the podcast blog. If you didn't get the address earlier, it's daw-music.com/daw-podcast, and on the left sidebar there should be a link to take the survey, and this just give us and our potential advertisers a better idea of what the audience thinks of the whole podcast. Well, in closing, I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Sorry if this was a little more segmented or goofy episode of the podcast. I'm just going to randomly play some stuff on the guitar, and we'll fade out to closing. So thank you very much. And again, have yourself a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hope to see you in January.
You've been listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, broadcasting from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.